Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today is a special double feature as we unbox both Superman Red Sun and Superman Rebirth. Okay, so the figure on our left, I believe, was the first release. This is Superman Red Sun, and on the right is Superman Rebirth. This is a much more recent figure. As you can kind of see, they share similar parts. Their capes appear to be identical. Their legs look to be identical. The most noticeable differences, as you can tell, is the portraits. They both feature different heads, and also their chest. Each one has a different chest emblem. Some subtle differences, as you'll notice, are their hands. Superman Red Sun has opened up hands, whereas Superman Rebirth on the right, he has fists. Alright, so let's get this started. Both of them, the package design's clean. As you can tell, they both have trading cards in the back. I believe both figures also feature a flight stand. I can see it's more visible on this side, but on this figure I can't really tell. I do see the clear base, but I'm not sure if that's a flight stand or not. We'll know once I take them out of the box. Over here, Superman Red Sun. On this side, Superman DC Rebirth. On the back. Alright, so this is something I like about the earlier released McFarlane figures. I love the fact that they have actual comic book artwork representing, where this figure actually came from. So what we have here is the original cover to Superman Red Sun, and it's an awesome illustration. Over here, we just have, it's decent fig photography. I don't mind that. We also have a lineup of some of the other figures that were currently out when this figure was released. Same here. Let's get these opened up. Alright, so we have Superman DC Rebirth over here on the right, and let's get this guy out. Okay, let's get these into focus real quick. There we go. Alright, so first impressions of both action figures while they're still in the tray. I'm impressed. For the most part, they're both kind of like a slight departure from the Superman I'm accustomed to. The one on the right is a little bit closer to the iconic Superman, but there's some differences in his color scheme. So the Superman on the left, this is Superman from the Red Sun graphic novel or comic book series. If you're unfamiliar with Superman Red Sun, that's an alternate reality. So DC used to have a line of comic books called DC Elseworlds, and in the Elseworlds line of books, they would take familiar superheroes like Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman, and they would change up their origins. In the case of Superman Red Sun, this was the idea of Superman growing up in Mother Russia as opposed to growing up in the farms of Kansas. Superman Red Sun is actually probably my favorite Superman story. It's a great read if you haven't read it. Superman Rebirth, this is a somewhat much more modern take on the character. And even though Rebirth came out a couple of years ago, they've already changed out Superman's look, so he no longer looks like this in the comics. Currently in the comics, I believe they kind of went back to his traditional red briefs on top of his uniform, and he's kind of back to having his normal colored boots as opposed to this like the completely almost blue leggings here. One thing I've noticed looking at these figures while they're both in the tray is that Superman from DC Rebirth comes with only one pair of hands and he has fists, whereas the earlier release Superman Red Sun, he comes with a pair of opened up hands that are like this, which are good for like flight poses, but he also comes with two fists here. So that's kind of interesting, you know, that he comes with a little bit additional accessories that this one does not. So underneath, it looks like they both do come with flight stands. They also come with trading cards. For me, the Red Sun's a win-win. I love the fact that it comes with a trading card that represents the actual artwork from the comic book. And over here is just fig photography. The fig photography isn't bad, but I like the fact that, you know, when they do the comic book art, they're kind of like, it's kind of like a nod to the original source material. And to the best of my knowledge, someone told me that the reason why they don't use the comic book artwork anymore is because, I think because of like, you know, if they use the comic book artwork, I think they have to compensate the artist. So they try to avoid that altogether and just go with the fig photography. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what, you know, people have told me. Alright, so let's get these figures out of the trays and get started with our review. Alright, for now, I'm just going to leave the extra pair of hands in this box. We're not going to necessarily review it with the alternate hands. And we're going to take out this guy. Okay, so we have a Superman Rebirth on our right. And then we have Superman Red Sun on our left. Alright, I'm going to try to get these both in neutral poses. So we could do a proper review, side-by-side comparison. Alright, so this is looking good. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Let's take a look at the height of the figures. So in terms of the height, Superman Red Sun measures in at 7 and looks like a little over 7 1/4. Superman Rebirth comes in at a little over 7 1/4. So give or take, you know, a couple of millimeters, they might be the same height. I'm examining the bodies now, trying to figure out which parts are reuse. So it looks like Alright, so the capes appear to be identical, I think. It's weird because they look identical, but they're not. They seem to have the folds in the same area, but there's something about this one. The cape, I don't know. It feels like it's a little bit tighter. If I can't explain it, but it looks like all the folds are identical. But then when you look at it closely, it looks like it might be a slightly retooled cape. The material on this one is a lot thicker. It's a lot harder. It doesn't want to bend that well. This one's a lot softer, and it folds a lot easier. I can't explain it, but they both look identical, but the minute you examine it a little bit closely, it looks like there's subtle differences. Like the folds in this one, they look a lot deeper. I'm not sure if that's because of the nature of the plastic with this having a thinner material. I do like the shade of this red more than this one. This one's a little bit more muted, but that might be more so because of the color scheme of the character. When you examine the heads, they of course have two different portraits. This Superman here looks a lot more stern. You know, kind of falls in line with the story of Superman Red Son. You know, Superman grows up in Mother Russia as opposed to being raised by the Kents in Kansas. There's some really nice sculpting here. A lot of harsh angles, really tight. You know, it makes him look very stoic, very authoritative. Much sterner appearance. This one here, he kind of looks more like the traditional Superman. He kind of has that spit curl in the front. The paint application on his face, it's pretty good, but there's something about his eyes. There's like some sort of like subtle shading around his eyes. It almost makes him look like he's tired, which is kind of weird. But, you know, this one has a nice thick jawline. He looks like the Man of Steel. There's some subtle blue highlights in his hair. Yeah, both have excellent face sculpts. Here's a profile look of both of them. Red Son has a much thicker chin. So if he was a boxer or UFC fighter, he'd be able to take one to the chin and still stand up. In terms of the hair sculpt, I want to say Superman Rebirth, he has much finer hair. The sculpting's, it's a lot more detailed. Not that this one isn't, but the hair and the hairlines, they're not as fine lined as this one. Superman, in terms of their upper chest and shoulders, this guy's a little bit more jacked. He has bigger shoulders. This guy's a little bit on the leaner side. So I was really taken back because initially I thought these figures shared a lot of the same parts, but they don't. Superman Rebirth, he's a much bulkier character. This one's a little bit leaner, actually. This guy looks like he goes to the gym and just focuses on chest and arms all day. This guy looks like a little bit more well-rounded. Looks like he puts in a little bit more time with everything. And this guy looks a lot more jacked. This guy looks like he's eating more pasta. Yeah, he looks considerably a little bit bulkier. In terms of their chest emblem, this has the much more traditional Superman logo. It's embossed over his chest so you can actually feel it. And there's also some folds in his clothing, as you can see. This one has a much wider emblem. It has the sickle. And his uniform's different too. This feels more like the spandex bodysuit. There's some trim along it, as well as some micro texture and some patterns. This one has some paneling line on under his chest and on the sides of his torso, but the folds are a little bit more readily visible. Like this one, you can actually see the cuts in his abs, where this one, it looks like his uniform's kind of covering his abs a little. One thing I don't like about this figure is I don't like how the elbow cut and the way it's jointed goes over his bicep. It's not a very clean look. Whereas on this figure, even though it's only a single pinned elbow, it's a much cleaner design. Like this one, you're afforded much more mobility with the two the two joints. So this is a double jointed elbow, 2 pins. This one is only single jointed. So in terms of the mobility, he could only bend, not as far. This guy could like, go full bicep. This one's only like at a 90 degree. But I do like this one more because it's a cleaner look. The bicep is this one piece. Whereas with the extra pins and the double joints, it cuts into the bicep. So the look isn't as clean. So for me, I think that's a personal preference kind of thing. Personally, I'm not too big on like posing my characters all crazy. I just mostly just have my figures just kind of just standing on my shelf. So I kind of like the cleaner look of this bicep. In terms of the lower torso, this guy kind of has... I like to call it the floating belt because the buckle's not attached to the actual belt strap. And then he has his tights over his pants. And then there's some deep panel lines along his legs. This one's a little bit more on the traditional Superman where he wears his briefs over his tights. And then here's his belts and there's some belt loops. This one has cuffs on the end of his sleeves. This one does also, but they're unpainted. They both have the traditional Superman boots with the M at the top of the boot, sculpted on top. Same with here. They have different feet. So yeah, at first I was under the impression that these were like pretty much identical figures, but upon handling them, completely different. So yeah, they don't really share anything outside of possibly the capes. In terms of articulation, this one's head rotates. He could look down this much. He could look up like that. So you could kind of get him into a flying pose, but I'd appreciate it more if his head could like tilt back further. Rebirth, head rotates, looks down, not that much, looks up, not that much either. So in terms, if you want to get these guys into a flight pose, this one wins. This one can't even look up. Very disappointed in that. It's Superman. He should be able to fly. And when he flies, he should be able to look up. But this one does not. Arm articulation rotates, moves out, bicep cut, bicep swivel, single pinned elbow, wrist articulation, Superman Rebirth, arms rotate, they go out, bicep cut, bicep swivel. He wins in the department where it's double pinned elbows, so he could go full bicep, so he could enter like Mr. Olympia and flex for you. But like I said, for me personally, I do like the cleaner look of the single pinned elbow. Whereas here, the joints cutting into the bicep, it kind of mars its appearance. Whereas this one, much cleaner, almost seamless look. Wrist articulation is the same. This one has big fists. He has nice, meaty fists. This one, he has hands for flying. So if you want him to fly, he could fly. Yeah, this guy has nice, big, soup bone hands. Leg articulation. This guy, Rebirth, kicks up about this much. He could kick out. Could almost do the splits completely. Double jointed knees. Ankle articulation and his toes are articulated also. Red Sun could kick out, not as high. He could kick, I think he could go full splits, almost full splits. He has double jointed knees also, double pins, ball joint for ankles, and this one also has toe articulation. Okay, so in terms of like comic book accuracy, let's take a look and see how they compare to their comic book counterparts. So over here we have the actual Superman Red Sun graphic novel. Like I said, I love this story. It's probably my favorite Superman story. I read this many years ago. One of my college instructors actually recommended recommended it to me because I didn't buy the miniseries at the time. And I fell in love with this story. It's amazing. It's written by Mark Miller with art by Dave Johnson, Killian Plunkett, Andrew Robinson, and Walden Wong. So this story, it's like I said, this is an Elseworld story. This takes place in an alternate reality where Superman is raised in Mother Russia as opposed to being raised by the Kents in Kansas. So let's find a nice full body shot of Superman so we can do a comparison. Yeah, so in the comic book, he has a much more muted color scheme. It's a little bit more on the gray side. And here, as you can see also, they recreate the cape perfectly. It kind of like, it's almost like a diamond shape towards the bottom. And then you get that here in the comic book. In terms of his portrait, this one has a much more prominent spit curl than this one does. He has it, but it doesn't cover down his forehead like it does on the Rebirth figure. I think the face sculpt is nice. This one, he looks a little bit more stern than he should, though. Because in the comic book, I don't remember Russian Superman looking as mean as this one does. This one almost looks a little bit like, almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of. He covered up the top of his head. It almost looks like Arnold. But overall, I do think this does a great job of representing Red Sun Superman. But the ironic thing is that I kind of feel like this one should have a bulkier body, like this guy. You know, like with this guy growing up in Mother Russia, I picture him just eating a lot of potatoes. So he's like carbo loading all day. So for me, I would appreciate it if he looked bulky like this one. Alright, so now let's take a look at Rebirth Superman and see how accurate his costume is. So it's weird. So I was trying to find, I had the hardest time trying to find a full body shot of this character. And I went through like the first like 5 issues of Superman Rebirth, and I couldn't find a decent full-bodied shot. So I had to settle for, you know, the best one I could find, which was in issue 2. So let's find. All right, so here's one. His body's kind of shadowed out, but he does have the same belt. He kind of has that red trim above his boots where it's really thin, like this one has. The head sculpts, like I said, I love this head sculpt. It's great, especially the way they do the spit curl. One thing he is missing is that Rebirth Superman appears to have the Superman yellow logo on the back of the cape. This one does not have that. Yeah, you can see right here. He has the Superman emblem on the back of his cape. This one's missing it. Yeah, so I think this figure does an okay job of recreating this. You know, with the omission of the symbol, I think it's pretty decent. All right, so let's talk numbers here. If I had to rate these figures numerically on a scale of 1 to 10. All right, so for Red Sun Superman, for me, I have a bias towards this character because I love the story so much. I mean, my initial instinct is just to go nuts and be very generous and say this guy's a 9. But realistically speaking, you know, he falls a little bit short in some areas, especially the articulation. Even though I do like the fact that his bicep and his arms look a lot cleaner with the single elbow joint. You know, I know that a lot of people do prefer the, you know, much more articulated figures. So I think because of that, this guy might take a hit there. I would have appreciated more if this guy was a little bit bulkier like this one is, just because in the story and the way he's illustrated, he's a much beefier character. So I think overall for this figure, 8.5 at the highest, 8 at the lowest. It's decent. You know, if you're a fan of the Elseworld storylines and the alternate Superman, I think this is a must purchase. For me, when it comes to the alternate universes and the different Supermen, I think Red Sun is, like, for me, the premier alternate reality Superman. I love this character. So when it comes to Rebirth, this is a pretty decent figure overall. The one thing that just bothers me is the bicep cut. I don't like how the joint cuts into the bicep like that. And, it's missing the emblem on the back, but I could kind of forgive that. But if I had to rate this figure for me, I'm going to say an 8.5 to an 8 also. The one thing that really bothers me with this figure is that this is Superman, and he should be able to get into a flight pose. But unfortunately, his head doesn't really arch back all that much. In terms of his ab crunch, you could have him arch back like this to make him fly, but it looks kind of silly. I'd like it if his head could actually move back a little bit further. When this guy's in his flight mode, he can arch his head back and then he can move his hands. But one thing I'm noticing now, which might hurt the figure a little bit, not that I'm going to detract the point, is that since this one has a softer cape, when he arches back, he could get into an easier flight pose. This one's cape is a lot stiffer, so when you try to arch him back, it's going to fight you, so it's not going to want to move. So there's that. Okay, so yeah, so with that being said, I think they're both excellent figures overall. Much like Batman, I do think the McFarlane toy line is just a little bit saturated with too many Superman figures. But, Superman's it's a popular character. Kids love him, collectors love him. But I'm really glad that at this point with the DC Multiverse line, they're really expanding to other characters beyond Batman and Superman. So that's a plus. So, if you're into these characters, go out, buy them. I think they're worth the money, especially at the price point that McFarlane toys are at. Alright, so let's wrap this video up. Once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for your continued likes, comments, and support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I will talk to you later.